Welcome, everyone. It is 5:04, so we're just going to give a little bit of time for people to join us here before we get started with our community office hours this evening. Great, we have one of our, hi Pilar, we have one of our translators present now.
Hello, how are you? I was having some problems logging in.
It's because I didn't turn it on fast enough.
Yeah.
But I'm promoting a new interpreter. Got you first.
Got scared for a second.
And Selma, I'm doing it for you.
Okay.
And you guys should be set to go in a second. Keys. Oh, I don't need another one. Why doesn't it want to start? I added you both. Huh.
Okay, it looks like we have about 63 attendees so far. So we're just getting our interpretation translation set up, and we'll go ahead and get started in just a moment. You just let me know when you're ready, Marianne.
Thank you. I'm adding them, but the little start button doesn't want to let me start interpretation. Grant, you got any thoughts? I've added them. I can see them both, but the start button is not dark. So
I don't see the world icon on the bottom, which makes me question whether the ability is turned on.
Yeah.
I see it on mine, but let me try.
I don't see on mine.
I can't click start. It won't let me. I open it, but let's see why.
Maybe you have to share the control.
Well, Raquel gave me all the power. I'm in control.
So powerful.
I guess, but it's it doesn't want to let me anyway. Raquel, can you, do you see the world in yours?
No, because you're now the host.
See what happens when you make me the host. Thanks for your patience, everybody. We got to get the interpretation set up and we will be with you. Let's see, I am going to Grant, I'm making you the co-host so you can help me. And there'll be two of us. Dang it, I don't understand. Our interpreters have to be panelists, right? I made them panelists. Can you see what I see, Grant?
I see the ability to start and stop recording, but I do not see the world on mine.
Oh, I'm so special, but it's not working. All right, okay, the last thing I'm gonna do, Raquel, is I'm gonna give you the power back. And see if when you're the host, if you can push on the world and say, start the translation and add, because it wouldn't let me click start. So you see a little start when she click on the world and add the.
Okay, so Pilar and Pilar, I've just added you.
Oh,
Okay.
you did it.
I see. I see.
You did it, Raquel. Thank you. I wonder if it was.
It says English and Spanish. Doesn't say Portuguese and Spanish.
Okay, and then I'm going to add another interpreter and Selma. And we're going to do. Okay, it should be set up.
Good job. Okay, so si necesita traducción en español, haga clic en el mundo abajo, o si tiene los tres puntitos y está en un Android y escoge Spanish. Precisa traducir portugués, clique no mundo o los tres puntijos se você tem un Android y escoger portugués.
Okay, just a thumbs up if you can see that screen. Okay, Marianne and Grant, we're good. Okay, wonderful. Okay, everyone, it is about 10 after 5, and we have almost 100 people joining us today for our community office hour. So first off, I want to thank you all for being here. I know it was short notice, and this is being recorded. And we will be sending that out via the recording out via Parent Square immediately following, with a little bit of information related to what is shared this evening, and the links to the surveys we're hoping families are able to complete shortly. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Before I do that, just want to again introduce myself, Raquel Rose. I get to be the superintendent here in the Kentfield School District for those that I have not yet gotten to meet. And then I'll hand it over to Marianne. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, Marianne Spitzer, and I am the proud principal of Basich Elementary School.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Grant Althouse, principal of Kent Middle School.
Great. And we have Pilar and Selma here translating for our Spanish families and our Portuguese families, or Spanish speaking families and our Portuguese speaking families. So with that said, what you have in front of you is the agenda for today's office hour. We're going to give a quick update related to public health and tier 2 and what that allows us to do. Then share with you Kentfield School District status and considerations for expansion. Give a little bit of insight into the student experience and the Basich and Kent schedules that our work groups worked diligently on just about a month and a half ago, over the last month and a half, and then hit on some frequently asked questions or comments that we've heard from the community. So with that said, we'll go ahead and just dive in. So as many are aware, last Wednesday, the County of Marin moved from the purple tier to the red tier. It's very exciting. It's due to the vigilance of our community and really maintaining those safety mitigation strategies that continue to be reinforced by our public health. So we're very excited about that. We're continuing to go in the right direction. I'll be sharing some slides that I got just from our Marin Health and Human Services website that gives specific information related to data in schools, data in Kentfield, data in Marin County. So we should be very proud of all that work that's been done by our community at large to get us where we are today. Second is vaccination status. So again, I'll give some more information related to that, but as you may have heard in the press, right now our educators are being highly prioritized to access vaccinations. That started last week. And so we are very, very fortunate because we are such a small district that we've had great opportunities for our local educators in the Kentfield School District to access the vaccination. And I'll share more about that in just a moment. With some of the shifts happening related to transitioning to the red tier and additional updates with vaccination availability, we are anticipating some changes to our site-specific safety protection plans. And so this will all be guided through public health. I know the California Department of Public Health is just releasing additional information to guide us as we continue to expand in-person learning for our students. And so we'll for sure be providing information to our community, so you're well aware of the parameters that we will be implementing within our school settings. And the last thing I do want to touch on is Senate Bill 86, Assembly Bill 86 legislation that you might be hearing a lot about as well out in the community. And this is related to the Safe Schools for All initiative from our governor, and really wanting to focus on increasing in-person opportunities for students. And so that funding will come our way shortly. This funding is going to be very restricted dollars, one-time money that we will be able to access and support us in really trying to move us forward to a more traditional way of operating schools. So we're excited about that, and again, more to come in the coming weeks. So here's some data that our local public health was just highlighting just yesterday. And so, as I mentioned, we are in the red tier. And so our adjusted case rate in Marin County is 10.7, which is great, and it continues to go down. And the other piece that I thought was quite interesting is this new area that is on the Marin Health and Human Services website. And it specifically speaks to geographical areas and what's happening related to COVID. So you can see this is for Kentfield, and over the last 14 days, 5 positive cases. And so if you look at this, this graph here, you can see how we're trending down, right in the direction that we need to be. Very similar to where things were in the early fall. So excited about that, and what's obviously allowing for more opportunities for us to get back to what we used to know pre-COVID. So, so thank you for your vigilance and work in helping make that happen in our community. Here is the data that I'm sure many have seen related to what's happening in our schools. Over here on the left-hand side is from the Office of Emergency Services and their update related to school suspected transmissions of COVID, and still we're sitting at 11 total cases that we've seen here in Marin County. This slide here speaks to specifically what's happening in our school settings, and I'll highlight suspected in-school transmission related, broken down by student to student, adult to adult, adult to student, and student to adult. And you'll see this 0 here, student to adult, is something that we really like to promote and highlight, because what it proves per public health is that if we're following the mitigation strategies and keeping the high level of vigilance in our school settings, because they are stable and because they are controlled, we really can expand our learning for in-person opportunities for our kids in a safe way. So this data is being shared across our state. I have colleagues in the Sacramento area, and they share with me that they're seeing a lot of what's happening in Marin. So we really are leading the state, and it's very exciting. And that's thanks to our public health and our local educators here. So where are we in terms of the Kentfield School District and our plans for next steps? So many are well aware that we have work groups that came together in late January and through the month of February, and they were charged with developing some adjustments for hybrid instruction, as well as a full in-person schedule. That would mean that kids would be on campus 5 days a week, and those that chose to maintain a distance learning only program would have that opportunity for 5 days a week as well. And so those groups came together, both from the basic school as well as Kent Middle School, and were charged with some of that work and dug in and created some schedules that you're going to get to see in just a moment. In terms of timeline, what we agreed to with our Kentfield Teachers Association is that we would not do any further expansion until we were in the red tier for 2 weeks. So that means we went into the red tier on February 24th, and 2 weeks would be March 10th. So there's no further expansion that could happen any earlier than that. And whatever date that we decide to do further expansion, it must be mutually agreeable with our Teachers Association. And so we are meeting later this week on Thursday to speak specifically about the collective bargaining agreement, as well as our MOU and our tentative agreement, to really dig into what is that timeline going to be, so that we can update our staff our staff and our community accordingly. So if we need to, we also have tentatively set March 5th as another date to continue those negotiations. So hopefully we'll be able to come to a good agreement sooner rather than later, that we'll be able to share widely to our community, because we all are very much interested in the opportunity of moving ourselves forward and utilizing these schedules that the work groups created, and making them a reality for our students. So we'll just see what happens shortly. As we think about further expansion, these are the key areas that we're looking at. And primarily looking at safety, and not just looking at the physical safety, but the social emotional well-being of our students and our staff, and that everybody feels very comfortable and in the space in which they get to learn and teach in. Also the teaching and learning. That's what we get to do in schools. And so really wanting to think about how can we get ourselves back to what we used to know while utilizing all of these mitigation strategies to keep ourselves as safe as possible. Public health has said over and over that schools are not a driver for community transmission. The data I shared just a moment ago continues to reiterate that. And so with the vaccination rollout and that increasing in our community, it's continuing to provide us the data necessary to move us towards that further expansion. Because we have these stable, supervised environments where we're able to operate in a very contained place, we're able to maintain those safety mitigation strategies. As we expand and have more students on campus at one time, we have to be sure that we're very, very lockstep in how we're utilizing those safety strategies, because we want to keep people as safe as possible. In terms of vaccination, you may have read in the paper that this Saturday, Public Health is hosting what they're calling a super pod, where there's going to be mass vaccinations provided for our educators. Each educational entity within our community was provided on Monday a number of vaccination slots that they could provide to their staffs that were in priority groups 1 and priority groups 2 of educators. I want to take a moment here to let you all know that we are so fortunate by being in such a small community and a small staff that at this point in time, as of the March 6th date, all of our staff will have had the opportunity to get vaccinated. So that's not just because of the public health opportunities that have come available to us, but it's because our staff has truly, truly leaned into the opportunity to get vaccinated in any which way that they could. So many staff have gone into the city and to San Francisco to get vaccinated. They've gone to the East Bay to get vaccinated if they're outside of the area. And then obviously any kind of opportunities that are happening at Walgreens, CVS, at the super pods that were happening here in San Rafael. So I'm just very, very excited to report that our staff are very much interested in those vaccinations. We have now at this time, I can say, everybody has had the chance to get an official slot to sign up for a vaccination. And so not everybody has both doses, but many of our staff do. And so it's very exciting for us because we know that that really is something that's going to allow for people feeling like they have more of a safeguard as they get to be in the environments with more students. In a moment, you're going to hear from Marianne and Grant talking about the schedules in which they created with their work groups. And when they came together, their focus was really around what kind of mode of instruction are we wanting to have for our students? And the notion of a traditional mode of teaching is really the interest of our staff, wanting to get back to what they had and what they've been trained in and what they love and know to do. And so that is really a collective interest of all of us. Very much wanting to get off the simultaneous instruction to not having to do both modes of instruction at the same time, and acknowledging the importance of the social emotional well-being of our kids and having the chance to have that interaction. So these truly are the considerations that we've had guide us as we've planned through and come up with what you're going to see here in just a moment related to the schedules that we'll get to implement shortly related to full in person. That said, I'm going to hand it over to Marianne.
All right, thank you, Raquel. Good evening again, everyone. I'm so excited to share with you our full in-person plan. And I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge every single teacher and staff member at Basic in helping us plan for this. We had a very industrious work group made up of teachers of all grade levels and different subject matter, as well as classified staff and all our specialists. So I think we really came up with a plan that will be best for really, putting kids first and what's best for kids. And thank you to our staff for working so hard on this. So as you can see here, full in-person does mean all students on campus every day. And for us, we really wanted to continue with our large blocks of time that we delivered instruction. And as you know, over time, we started distance learning and there was really no asynchronous time. It was 8:30 to 1 every day. Teachers were on their Zoom every day. And as we added hybrid instruction, we decided that we would keep the kids at home and the kids in school the entire time again. And it has been a lot of work, but it has really paid off. And I think that we have been providing 4.5 hours of instruction a day since the beginning of the year, which is pretty impressive. And so this new schedule is similar in that it's a similar block of time, but there's no simultaneous instruction any longer. So the teacher will have all their kids in front of them, a larger cohort of students. And as you see there, it says students 4 foot distance instead of 6, so that we can fit more students in our classrooms. And we'll have to continue to stagger our schedules, but even more drastically because we could have upwards of 500 students on campus. So we'll need to stagger our arrival and dismissal and all our recesses, but that's fine with us. We just have to limit how many kids are out in their cohorts on campus at the same time having snack and recess. So for distance learning, depending on how many families choose this, and we won't know until we send out our survey shortly that lets us know how many families want to come back full in person or continue with their distance learning. Because the teachers are no longer teaching simultaneously, we'll have to have a separate track for our distance learners. And we really can't design it too much further than that right now until we find out how many students we have selecting that option. But it would be something similar in that it would be that block of time that we were trying to keep sacred for our distance learners as well. So as you can see the little schedule there, the staggered start would mean that kindergarten may arrive at 8:15, but their instruction starts at 8:30. They would do their 3.5 hour day, have one large break in the middle of the day, or the middle of the morning, and then first and second, they would arrive sooner to school at 8 o'clock, and they would start their day at 8:10 so that they could leave at 12:40 and still have their 4.5 hour day. And then that way we'd have our third and fourth graders starting at 8:30 and leaving at 1:10. So we have all those staggered dismissals. And I know all you folks out there, if you participated in our Sir Francis Drake car line, it is a commitment. So we're trying to make sure that we have spread out enough time for being able to pick up all the students safely and without too long of a wait. So next screen, Raquel. This is just a sample of what our daily schedules will look like. We don't have the content areas plugged in yet because this has been the exciting part for the classroom teachers is we're a little less rigid with our instructional time because we're not worried about the kids at home. And so we have basically up to 5 blocks of instruction that teachers can play with: math, reading, writing. But then of course, we still have some time for science and social studies, some student supports. Our enrichment times can be moved around in there instead of all at the same time every day. Our enrichment teachers and our paraprofessionals will be doing more and more in-person instruction, which is super exciting. And so the grade level teams have some autonomy, and they're working on this right now. And some are already finished of kind of setting up what their daily schedule will look like. They do have the flexibility in that large block in the late morning if they wanted to take another 10-minute break, 5 or 10-minute break, teacher supervised, or again, like they have the freedom instead of now they have Zoomies at home and they see the roomies are getting wiggly. They've got to deal with that. But when we have just all roomies, we'll be able to take a quick break and go outside. Actually go to the garden, actually do some things on campus, spend more time in the field and those kind of things. So those are the things we're looking forward to. And as you can see, kindergarten, their recess overlaps with, I think, first grade, but it doesn't matter because they have a different recess area. So we have to have staggered recesses also. I know there'll be questions. So at the end, I think we'll allow some questions. So write them down and I'll be glad to answer any questions. And again, we're just really excited about this next step. I feel like every step in our schedule, started out 2.0, then I was saying it was Basic 2.0. We had to open a whole new school of distance learning, and then we're at 2.1 and 2.2, and now we're at 2.3. So it's exciting to have that next step and next level of instruction at Base Edge. And we're super excited to welcome kids back to campus.
Great, thanks, Marianne. Grant, you're up.
Thank you. I'd like to also appreciate our Kent faculty and the 14 faculty members that committed the extensive amount of time in January and February to develop our full in-person model of instruction. We started the experience by posing the question, when the fear of the virus has subsided, what do we want teaching and learning to look like at our school? And unequivocally, without exception, the desire was to be back face-to-face with our children without a Zoom component, and teaching and learning in a way in which teachers have been trained and become familiar, all of us become familiar. And so I would also just echo Marianne's sentiments. It's a very exciting time to envision what lies ahead. And I'm really excited to share with all of you our plan for full in-person instruction at Kent. So similarly to Base Edge, we have all students who are planning to be in person with us on campus every day, Monday through Friday. Similarly to Base Edge, we will also have full classes of students with students spaced 4 feet distance from students around them. I'd like to talk for a moment about the schedule that you see in front of you, and then we're going to look at a little bit more of a detailed version, and then I'll touch on the other components that you see listed there. Our instructional day on Monday will span from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And our instructional day on Tuesday through Friday will span from 9 a.m. until 2 p.m. The difference is essentially needed in order to allow the number of class sessions that we plan to offer over the span of the week, while offering the equal amount of time in each one of students' classes. So it ends up being a little bit of a complicated mathematical exercise, which I could go into greater depth with. However, the outcome is that we have 5 unique class sessions on Monday and 4 unique instructional class sessions on Tuesday through Friday, hence the differing dismissal time. So in a typical middle school environment, at least the one that we had pre-COVID, students would attend a class, and then the bell would ring and they would all disperse and they would go to whatever the next class on their schedule is. In order to still provide some stability with student cohorts, the difference this time is that students will be with a teacher, teaching and learning within a classroom space, and the bell rings, and all of those students will get up and leave that classroom together. And all of those students will travel to the next class on their schedule. And so for the second period of their day, they will be with all of the same students that they have been with, but they will be with a new teacher in a new classroom space. And so what we've eliminated is all of the mixing of students, the visiting of lockers, the visiting of restrooms during those passing periods, and just having a very orchestrated transition from one classroom to another. So the stable student group remains constant across a student's day, which will help us with any necessary contact tracing, et cetera, but still allows for students to have face-to-face contact with all 7 teachers on their schedule. So each one of the classes will meet 3 times per week. We have 5 classes meeting on Monday and 4 classes meeting Tuesday through Friday. All of those classes are 55 minutes in length, with the exception of first period, which is 65 minutes, to allow for some time for our morning broadcast and a brief check-in. We'll continue to air a daily podcast episode as our version of the broadcast this year. We do have a distance learning only pathway, which is embedded into our schedule. In 6th through 8th grade, the students will essentially follow a very similar, if not identical, schedule as their peers that are in person. However, they will be grouped into a distance-only pathway, and when they meet with the teacher on their schedule, that teacher will not have students in front of them. So because we have a 7-period schedule that we're working on, 6 of the teacher's periods are in person, and 1 of the teacher's periods is taught at a distance. And so the distance learning students, for those who sign up for it, will have a longer distance learning day. They will still maintain connection with each one of the teachers that they currently have. However, I will share that our focus will be on robust in-person, face-to-face instruction. And so a distance learning student may experience lessons that differ than in-person students. for reasons which I think are fairly clear, and that what you can do via the computer is inherently different than what you can do in person. And so our planning and our focus will be on those students that are in person, and we will do our very best to provide strong instruction via a distance as well, but there will be some differing components there. As far as the 5th grade distance learning experience, it will be a little bit different. And I'll talk a little bit about 5th grade when we look at the sample schedules in a moment. 5th graders will also continue to maintain contact with their current assigned teachers. A 5th grade distance learner will have approximately half of their day with synchronous tasks and half of their day with asynchronous tasks. Again, the focus being on the in-person learners with our 5th grade teachers, while still trying to provide a distance learning program for students and families that need it, that still meets the educational standards that we have in front of us. So if we could go to the next slide, Raquel, please. So this slide shows you 2 versions of the schedule that we plan to employ. So if you were following along with that concept of a 7-period schedule, however, days that only have 5 or 4 periods a day, it ends up being what we would call in kind of secondary school master scheduling a 7-period rotating schedule, which means that you don't have all 7 periods every day, but that you have 7 periods on your schedule and you see each of them 3 times per week. So you can see how the numbers kind of span out across the week, and you can see that a student would have a pretty wide variety around the subject areas that they cover each day. Now, in typical times, we have a schedule which is a little less confusing than this. However, we are confident that, especially because cohorts will be moving together between classes, that they will fairly quickly memorize their schedule. And all it will take is 1 or 2 savvy learners in the class to remember where they go next, and they can shepherd the whole group together to their following class. So you can see that I have a sample schedule for a 7th grader below. This would be a sample schedule for a 7th grader that happens to be in homeroom C right now. And you can see about what each day would include with the different subjects that they study each day, with the time they're spending with each one of those teachers. One period in the day, which I have yet to speak about, is the lunch/recess block. This is a shorter amount of time than our previous lunch and a longer amount of time than our previous recess. And our intention is that students can bring a hearty snack or even something that resembles a lunch and can eat it in their recess zone before they have some time to play. It was very important for the structure of our school that lunch starts and ends at aligned times across grade levels so that we can all start the period after lunch at the same time. Our facilities only allow for 2 grade levels to be playing at a time. Now, in pre-COVID times, we had 2 grade levels eat while 2 grade levels played, and then they swapped places, and the 2 grade levels that were playing, they ate, and then the other ones played. Because we don't have the facilities to have COVID restrictions around that kind of model, we have half of the school out at lunch recess, while the other half of the school remains in their classroom for a span of time that we're calling study session. Now, this particular time will include a variety of things across the week. For those of you who are familiar with the Kent pre-COVID reality, we had periods of time across our week called advisory, and we also had opportunities. And in distance learning, we had small group time and we had homeroom. We had all of these different things that came to take on different meanings with different objectives. This study session time is structural in nature in that it allows for students to be in a classroom while other students are out at lunch. But what we'll be doing with that time across the week is, for one of the sessions, will be similar to what we did in advisory, which was social emotional learning lessons. For 2 of the sessions, it'll be similar to what we have done in opportunities, which has been small group instruction and individualized support for students in their classes. And the remaining sessions will be additional time for students to complete classwork and homework and get some help from their peers and a teacher. And so while it is structural in nature to allow us to have all of the safety procedures needed in place for a safe lunch recess, it also serves some of our really essential purposes like a social emotional learning program and the opportunity to receive individualized support from teachers during a time outside of the instructional day. So I'm hoping that what you can see in these schedules presented here is a real desire and interest to have students in front of our teachers receiving face-to-face instruction for a length of time and a frequency across the week that can really accelerate students' learning in their grade level standards, increase connection between their peers and their teacher and their school, and really finish this very odd school year strong, maximizing every last instructional minute that we have for the 2020-21 school year.
Great, thank you, Grant. So with all of that being said, here are just some questions that have come forward that I want to highlight and touch on before we open it for Q&A from our attendees tonight. So the first is related to vaccination. So I just want to reiterate again that we are very fortunate in Kentfield because we have a smaller size staff in total, that at this point in time, we can confirm that we have been able to get everybody the option to get vaccinated. And that will happen this Saturday at the Super Pod in Marin. And we've just gotten a number of staff that over the last number of weeks have been able to find ways to get themselves vaccinated. So it's very, very exciting. That does not mean that everybody has gotten the 2 doses. It means that everybody by March 6th will have had the chance to at least get the first dose. So, so again, as I mentioned earlier, this is an additional safeguard for our staff, and we're excited that they're able to get that. Negotiations. So as I mentioned in an earlier slide, at this point in time, we have scheduled negotiations for this Thursday. We will be speaking about the collective bargain agreement as well as our memorandum of understanding and the tentative agreement to really dig into some of these schedules that Marianne and Grant talked about and our interest in supporting what the work groups have come together, as well as talking about a timeline to transition us to the next phase. So following negotiations, we'll definitely give the community an update in terms of information that we can get out as quickly as possible. The big question out there is, when will this all start? And as I mentioned earlier, our agreements right now state that we must be in the red tier at least 2 weeks prior to any further expansion. And so that means we'll be in the red tier on as of March 10th for 2 weeks. But we still need to mutually agree with our Teachers Association on the date to further expand. So that would be the earliest it could happen, but that is not the date in which we've agreed to yet. And that's what we're coming to the table to talk more about at the end of this week. What about lunch? So when the school year started, that was a concern that had come up from people related to lunch. And I think you heard both Marianne and Grant speak to that. They have obviously different schedules. And so the kids will be coming to school with some form of snack or something that can resemble a lunch so that they are able to get something hearty during the course of the day. The schedules are different. Kent has a later start and they end later. Basich has an earlier start and they end earlier. So we're planning that things will work as smoothly as possible, and just know that we're very cognizant of the importance of the kids being fed and getting that snack that they need to be able to access their education. So with that said, I'm going to stop share and start taking hands. So if you want to raise your hand, we'll start calling on people. So, Alyssa.
Hi, this is so exciting. First, I just want to say, Marianne, I'm very impressed by your Spanish. I'm thrilled to see this planning, and I want to appreciate everyone's work. My kids are at Kent, so that's where I'm going to direct my questions. One thing I've noticed that I really remember from pre-COVID times was the comfort my kids had in going to their teachers' classrooms to ask for help with a particular issue. But I remember being in middle school and having study hall and just having this really dry, boring time when you had to be quiet and do your homework. And I'm wondering, Grant, if you could explain how kids will get access to ask teachers questions if it's not their own teacher that they're in with at that moment, and they're not doing it online, so they can't join a Zoom with that teacher.
Thank you for that. I'd also like to say I highly respect Marianne's Spanish, so thank you for sharing it with us. So that's a great question, Elisa. One of the points I'd like to point out is part of the rotating schedule means that students would actually be with a different one of their teachers each day for that 30-minute of time. And that was intentional as well, because that means that they will have 5 different opportunities across the week to have some time with 5 teachers on their schedule. So I see that as a very positive thing. I'm also expecting that we're venturing into a time when the campus does feel more accessible to students than it feels now. Because they will be venturing to their teachers' classrooms across the day, I do envision that there will be opportunities to connect with teachers as teachers are walking to the restroom during recess, and they walk by children and have conversations about their learning and their lives. And it's a lightness and a joy that I expect to return to our campus that currently is not as robust as it typically is. And so I'm hopeful that your children have an increased sense of accessibility for their teachers. They'll certainly be spending 3 55-minute sessions with each of their teachers across the course of the week, as well as that protected time. I do also have some recollection of what like a study hall felt like for me in middle school, and I can say unequivocally that it's very, very different now. And that even when we ran opportunities, which was essentially our version of an intervention study hall block, it was more likely that those classes were pretty alive and loud with student collaboration on the work that they were doing, and really not about the rigid expectations of silent work completion. And I guess I would just conclude by saying I think we are all excited for a time when each classroom is kind of alive with social connection and social learning experiences. And that certainly is our interest to embed within that study session time as well.
That's really great. Thank you so much for clarifying that. Just a related, clarification. Will teachers still have office hours kind of things, so that if a kid, say on Monday, has a question about ELA or math that they're not understanding, do teachers have time built in to offer that?
Well, I think it would be, it's not built in the way that Opportunities was built in, but I think we would be transitioning back to a time where if students have questions, that an email to a teacher or otherwise scheduling a time to connect with a teacher, either via phone or stopping by a classroom. I think our teachers really do work to make themselves available, and I believe the intention is to continue to do that. However, there's not a specific office hour time protected within the day.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Kristen?
Hi guys, Kristen McDevitt. I have a kindergartner, Maddie, at Base Edge, and thank you so much everyone for all the work you've put together. I do have some questions. I guess my first is confirming all staff being vaccinated. I'm assuming that means classified as well, and if so, fabulous. My next question, as a former 4th grade teacher, I just wanted to kind of know what the guidelines is on hiring substitutes, like certificated or credentialed, substitutes. I also, just hearing you guys speak about staggered schedules, was wondering if the elementary has considered early bird, late bird to service the highs, and then, you know, the students needing support, especially if there's congestion and all of that. I know it's a controversial subject, but since they're used to being in cohorts and being in different groups anyway, if you guys had considered that. I also was wondering if there was a way that Marin County could somehow standardize tests. I know we're not like, it's not a unified school district and we're all kind of coming from different angles, but you know, seeing hours like 22 and 14 or whatever, just a way to kind of put everyone on the same playing field and see actually how we're doing. Because I believe we're doing quite well. And then my last question is, where did the 4 feet guideline come from? Because last I knew it was 6 feet, and I just wanted to make sure that we're all staying safe.
Okay, so I'm going to try to go fast. There's quite a few questions. So I'm going to go backwards. So the 4 feet, so the California Department of Public Health has released on January 14th information that allows for children to be 4 feet physically distanced in a classroom. But the adult and the students still must maintain a 6 foot physical distancing. And so that came out straight from the California Department of Public Health. Our local public health has made that permissible since the 30-point plan was released way back in August. So just to note, that is something that has been out there. It had not been something that was utilized greatly within our county, but now that things with the vaccination, having that come and be reinforced from the California Department of Public Health, there's a higher level of accommodation to that new guidance. So that's where it's come from. Standardized testing. So right now, the state is still looking at the CASP testing, if that's going to be offered or if it's going to be required, or if there's going to be a waiver. So we'll kind of have to pay close attention to that. That is for our 3rd through 8th grade students. We also internally and on site have staff utilizing various forms of formative assessment related to how students are performing and how to guide their instruction. So please know, and I would let the principals speak to that if they want to, but they can share a little bit about some of the ways in which teachers are monitoring student progress. But in terms of like county-wide and having one standardized assessment system, I've been here for 20 years as an educator in Marin County. We have not yet been able to accomplish something like that. It has been talked about, but has not yet to be accomplished. So I'm going to keep going before I see if Marianne and Grant want to chime in. Early bird, late bird, I think Marianne can speak to this. There has been some discussion around offering some additional supports that would happen as an extended day model. But that's still trying to be worked out. Nothing's set in stone yet, but discussions have occurred related to that. Substitute hiring, for sure, if there's people that are interested in getting hired by the school district, there is a process. We do have a link on EdJoin for any extra hire substitutes. You go through, get the fingerprinting, submit your application, and then you could be on site. We have substitutes that we regularly use, and we actually have also supported those substitutes in getting vaccinated. So that's a great thing to have to lean on, because we still need subs even in this time. And last, related to the vaccinations, yes, when I say all staff, I'm including our classified, our certificated, our administrative team, as well as I just mentioned, there are some regular substitutes that we have on our campuses that have been able to access the vaccination. So it's very exciting. Marianne and Grant, you want to chime in on any of this?
I can chime in about what I think you mean by the early bird, late bird, and I'm assuming that's like kids coming early and getting some extension work or getting intervention and after school also. And Raquel is correct in that we are developing an after school support classes 1st through 4th, kind of modeled after the homework club, but not so much. More each grade level selecting what they believe.
Annie, the card's up here. Sorry.
That's okay. Anyway, so, but we even still are at this point, we're hoping to start at least close to the 3rd trimester, a week into the 3rd trimester with that. And that's just in the works right now. But as far as actually any kids being around early or late, we've been working very close with Marin Enrichment. And so, it's been amazing working with them, because whatever new schedule we come up with, they adapt and support families. And so if there were families that continue to need support right after school, they can go to Marin Enrichment. And I think they open as early as just before 8. So, but that's all we have right now for that in the works. And then as far as state testing, we've talked about this a little bit as an admin team. As soon as someone started talking about an option not to do it, it's in your head about the opportunity to do the education. I mean, it takes at least a couple weeks or more to get through all the students that need to be assessed. And when we think about just getting back to school full time and then using 2 full weeks of that for an assessment that may not give us the information and that's useful to us, the formative assessments that we do now are much more useful. And, because it's such an all-encompassing summative evaluation, I'd rather be teaching.
Right.
That's kind of my feedback on that one.
Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to give us a time check. So we have quite a few hands. So we'll get all the people whose hands are up, but we also have a DLAC meeting right after this. So don't want to show up there too late. So Carrie.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for all this work. This is really exciting to see. I'm specifically excited about Kent, and that brings me to one of two questions. Why is Basage still on a somewhat shortened or condensed schedule? And will Learning Lab be able to be conducted in person?
Great question. Oh,
Sorry, I can go with the Learning Lab question, and then Marianne, you can speak to the basic one. Sorry. We're working out the details for special education and intervention service delivery. The intention is that students have already been grouped in a way that those services will obviously be available for them, and we're working out the details about whether they can be provided in person or whether some of those services would be provided into Zoom. But please know that students will receive all of their service minutes that they are entitled to.
so we are super excited about adding as much as in person as is safe enough for our teachers and students. And so the Learning Center teachers are itching to see their students in small groups, as well as our English learner teacher, our ELD teacher. And so, I mean, we have the options of tents. We've already got a couple up on campus, trying to work out even how we can start doing some of that right now during hybrid. And so I guess the short answer is yes, that we will be doing as much in person, speech, learning center, ELD supports as possible. And then the school day, and thank you for bringing that up, because I think it's a valid question. And I think the way that we've been looking at our instruction to date is that we've pushed it to the nth degree. So we had distance learning, and we did our distance learning 4.5 hours the full time. And then we added hybrid, and we stuck with the 4.5 hours. We didn't move to AM, PM as other schools have done, where there might be a 2.5 hours and then some 2 hours of asynchronous or things like that. And so we slowly but surely, incrementally, we've added more and more to our schedule. And now we're at that place where we can take away simultaneous, we can keep the 4.5 hours, but we're almost doubling who's coming on campus. And so at one time. And so I think that that's been our success, as step by step, incrementally adding more and more to be able to do everything safely and do it well. Continue to change our protocols and procedures based on the new model. So that's where we are with that. I don't think we are ready to go to a longer day at this point. And we do feel like while our teachers are not teaching simultaneously, they're going to be able to give so much more of themselves to the students, and all the students will benefit. That 4.5 hours is going to look a lot different because the teacher is just focusing on them the whole time. So.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Diane.
Hi, sorry. Carrie just asked a couple of my questions, but this kind of goes along with it, and this would be for grants. My son is not taking Spanish with his class, and he has academic workshop. So how do you see that working? Would he go with the Spanish class and then Zoom into academic workshop? Or you can tell me if you know.
Yeah. So we were able to create a schedule that really took into account which classes students were missing in order to have access to an intervention. And so your son was actually very intentionally placed into a group of students that had a few other students with a similar need. So he will actually be reporting to his academic workshop teacher while the remainder of the cohort reports to Spanish.
Oh, so awesome. Okay, great.
In-person intervention. And that's true for our other intervention classes, extended reading, extended math, and academic workshop.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, Ryan.
Hi, yeah, it's not Ryan, it's Lisa every time. I still haven't
Sorry.
figured it out. Sorry.
Hi, Lisa.
So mine again, it kind of couples with what Carrie Cannon said about the basic school day. First and foremost, I do want to thank everyone here and everyone that's been working. I know that our teacher has been nothing short of exceptional this year. I couldn't not be happier with the level of teaching she's given the kids. I have questions now that they go back, though. I feel like getting out for third graders, a 4.5 hour period is still really short, given the fact that they haven't had any assigned homework this year. We haven't learned about the MeWalks yet this year. We haven't learned any of the big projects that usually are done for third grade. We haven't gone through, and I'm really concerned about what they're missing rather than what they're getting. And so I'm hoping, Marianne, you can maybe shed a little extra light on that because I feel like their day is really short. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. You know, it's really the same answer. At this point, I feel like we are being wise in taking these incremental steps. And I think that for a teacher to go from 12 in their class to 20 or 20 plus students, for us to go from 250 people coming on campus to 500 coming at the same time, to also try to add a couple hours to the end of the day, include lunch, a staggered lunch, that was just skipping a step. And so I think it's important for us at this point to focus on what we can do for students and do it well and safely. And so that is the decision we had to make. Although, you know, I feel like all the decisions we are making are always tough ones. And they're kind of like something that, you know, in your head, I just want it to be like it was. I want to go till the end of the day and have it be normal, but it's just not. And there are just so many other things we have to consider. So we're starting off with the 4.5 hour day.
Thanks.
Angeline.
First of all, thank you so much for this plan. That is such a marked improvement. I'm so grateful. So my first question is, so it looks like the first hoop that we have to jump through before these changes are allowed is that we need to be in the red tier for 2 weeks. That's the first hoop. So that would be like in as early as like in a week or so, a little over a week.
Yeah, what I shared earlier, March 10th. Okay. March 10th would be the earliest, but again, we have to have usually a full day.
So if we could get KTA to agree to that early date, this is questions for Grant, is Kent ready? So are we ready to start this at the earliest possible opportunity?
Thank you for acknowledging that what's between the lines in that question is the amount of work it takes on the back end to prepare a school to run a brand new master schedule in the middle of the year, which I think is safe to say I don't think any of my colleagues here at Kent have ever done before. What I can say is that we will establish a mutually agreed upon start date, and whenever that start date is, we will be ready. So we have plans in the works to get it up and running. And when that date is established, you can rest assured that Kent will be ready.
Okay, and then the second question is, given that KTA leadership was really public yesterday on network television that they want to actually delay a start until after all vaccines have been available, both doses, and then a period of time to take hold. Is that an acceptable time frame for this administration to start? So that would probably push this out until late April. What's KSD's position on what leadership said yesterday?
Yeah, so I did not hear that in what I heard on the news yesterday. So maybe we saw different clips. What I just heard was that there was an interest in wanting to bring kids back safely, and I didn't hear members of our staff speaking. So again, there were, I don't know what all was said, but what I can say to you today is that we are meeting with our Teachers Association later this week. We're all committed to implementing these schedules that have been created through these work groups, and we want to do it as safe as possible. These vaccinations are very much available for our staff, and so we want to move as quickly as we can, but we have to do that as a mutually agreeable date. So as soon as we have that information, we will be sharing it. We know that's very much what our community wants to know, and so we want to be able to provide it. We just don't have it yet.
I think what I'm asking is, are you looking for a March date, or are you looking for an April date? Oh, because you have to be, I mean, what's your position in terms of trying to get kids back to school?
We have kids in school already, so let's remember that. Kids are on campus and school's operating. It's just not to the expansion level that in which we maybe everybody wants. We want to have it happen as soon as we can have it happen, but we also know that there's an infrastructure that needs to be in place to make it happen. So I will follow up and we'll give you guys our feedback in terms of how negotiation goes on Thursday following that. I think that's just where we're at right now, but we want it to happen as soon as it can happen. Any other questions, Angeline?
Oh, no, I'm finished. Thanks.
Matt?
You guys have so many questions. I almost think I forgot mine. I think some people have covered it. I'll just take the last 5 seconds because then you guys got to go on. I really appreciate a local community here. This has sucked, and there's been a lot of back and forth and everything. And I'm very grateful that we're in a public school that's in a small community where we can come together and solve for these. And I hope that continues. So thank you guys, and thanks to the PTA for everything you guys are doing.
Thanks, Matt. Andrea.
Hi, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, good evening. I also want to express my thanks and appreciation that we made strides to moving all the children onto the campus at the same time. I also had a similar question to Carrie's. It was, what was the rationale for not going back to the full Basic Day, which I think, Marianne, you answered. But I would kind of follow up either with the question or comment. I know we have a lot of funds coming from the state. Has there been a consideration to, and there's a significant learning loss, I think, as Lisa pointed out. There's been, quite a bit of content that hasn't been covered. And despite, the very great intentions of our teachers, especially, I also have a third grader, have we considered using those funds to do summer school and or extend the school year next year? I know that was one of the possibilities being discussed by our governor, where longer days coming in the next year to because we can't make up, but we can kind of move forward to better educate these kids and make up for the learning gaps that they've received this year. So have those been considered as options to kind of make up for the shortened learning time this year and the loss? And if not, are you going to consider them?
Yeah, so we just actually talked about this earlier today. Right now, our focus is on being able to get ourselves as ready as possible to have this expansion happen for the full in-person instruction. We totally recognize the interest in wanting to accelerate learning for kids that have had this disruption in their schooling. And so with the new Assembly Bill, Senate Bill 86 coming out and offering some financial supports to districts so that we can address learning loss mitigation, for sure we'll leverage that to the best of our ability so that we can help support our students. In terms of what will that look like, we're not sure yet. Could that be summer school? Could that be enhancements during the next school year? Could that be increased staffing? We just don't know. First, we need to get it fully passed. And also we have to acknowledge that it's a one-year funding source. So it's very much restricted and it's not ongoing. So we have to be very careful about how we utilize those dollars. So yes, we recognize that summer school or an extended day and all those options could be on the table. But right now we're definitely focusing on what's right in front of us, and that's expanding learning to occur as soon as possible for our kiddos this spring. Anything else, Andrea?
No, thank you.
Meredith.
Hi, thanks so much. I'll be quick because I know you're wrapping up. So can you speak to you said that it's an option for staff and to get the vaccine. Can you speak to the planned vaccine coverage rate among the teaching community? Like how many are planning to opt in to get vaccinated?
So yes, I would say I'm aware of all the people we've offered, I've only had 2, maybe 3 staff members decline.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Teresa.
Hi, someone had asked earlier about the difference in time spent at school between Basich and Kent Middle. And Marianne spoke of the difference being there because I guess there wasn't intention to rush into things and to do things methodically and carefully. What are the next steps to try and get our basic students back to a normal schedule? Have there been outlines regarding or agreements made between KTA and KSD regarding what it would take to get a more normal schedule for basic students in particular?
So when you say normal, you just mean a longer day?
A longer day, yeah.
Yeah, I'm so excited that we had the time and space to plan this step. This whole year has been like, plan it while you're doing it. And so we haven't gotten past where we are now. We're not finished planning. We'll be ready when it's time to open full in person, but we're still in that. We're still planning that. So I don't have another next step. I don't know if you had anything to add to that, Raquel.
No, for this year, we have this next step is this increase to full in-person. In terms of our current memorandum of understanding and tentative agreement that we have with our Kempville Teachers Association, it does expire at the end of this year. The next school year we're planning and our thinking is it would be similar to what would be considered a traditional year. But with the safety mitigation strategies, we're anticipating to continue to have to utilize the face coverings, et cetera. So that's just kind of where we're at right now. I don't know if that helps clarify, Teresa.
My other question is, there's a huge disparity amongst students who are attending Basich and Kent, families that have been able to supplement their children's learning this year versus those whose families don't have the resources, maybe because English is not their primary language. And so there's been extra difficulty, not only for these families, but also those with learning disabilities. How is the school or KSD supporting these families?
So as mentioned earlier, that if there are students that we know are having an increased level of struggling, the sites have both implemented various interventions to support in real time. As we get to bring more kids back onto campus, we'll have a better sense of where kids stand, and through assessment and observations that the teacher will be doing, we'll intervene accordingly. So we recognize that people have had different opportunities just based on their own circumstances. And so we will be wanting to address that directly. I think Andrea mentioned earlier related to the Assembly bill that just came out, and additional dollars that would be coming towards the district to support. And so we'll also leverage that to support however we need to accelerate learning for students. So there's a lot still on our plates, but right now our focus is really trying to get us to move to this next level and working with our Teachers Association to make that happen sooner rather than later. So hopefully that clarified a little bit.
Thank you so much for everything.
So it is 6:12 and we have another meeting that we have to run to. So thank you all for being here. We had over 125 attendees today, and it was really great to be able to share the schedule. Thank you, Marianne and Grant, for all of your work. Thank you to the work groups, and thank you to our parents that continue to stay engaged in this process. So we'll be in touch. You'll be getting a follow-up from us tonight that will have the recording as well as a little bit of information related to what was shared today. And we need to get the data about what people are planning for the third trimester. And so you can anticipate that you will be receiving that survey shortly, either tonight or first thing tomorrow morning, but it'll all come together in one message through Parent Square. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to either site principal or myself. So thank you again for your time and have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Good night.